Hello from Brisbane, Australia. My name's Bob, and once again I'd like to welcome you to another episode on the whitedoggarage YouTube channel. In this episode we're going to be looking at end-of-year maintenance on the machinery in the whitedoggarage. So it's currently the week between Christmas and New Year here in Australia, or all over the world in fact. It's 2021. Christmas Day was Saturday just gone, and New Year's Day will be Saturday that's coming. For some reason in Australia this week seems to be a bit of a national holiday, which means it's quiet, which for me anyhow, it's a golden opportunity to do some maintenance on the machines, to do their annual service. My main focus will be the lathe, the bench mill and the compressor. But there's a few other machines around the workshop that will be getting a little bit of love as well. But the first thing I've done is get together the oils and greases that I'll need for the service. I've got two hydraulic oils, ISO 68, ISO 46. They will be used for the main machines. The 68 goes in the bench mill and the 46 goes in the lathe. The way it works with these hydraulic fluids is that the ISO obviously stands for the International Standards Organisation, and then the number relates to the viscosity of the oil. The smaller the number, the less viscous the oil is. I also have some straight 30 weight mineral oil, and that's primarily for the compressor. I have kerosene, that's what we call it here in Australia. I think it's called paraffin in Britain. I'm not quite sure what the Americans call it. That's just a cleaning thing. I also have some greases. I've got a general lithium grease here, and I also have some what's affectionately known as moly grease, and the way it works is that it's still a lithium grease, but molybdenum disulfide is added, and it's a really good grease for heavy load, slow moving situations. And of course I have a catch pan to catch all the oils that I drain from the machines. Apart from the oils and greases, the other thing that we've got is a paper towel dispenser and rag bag. It's on a little trolley that I made some years ago, and means I can move it readily around the workshop to where I'm working on a job. So I'm going to start with the bench mill here, but before I move on to its service, I'm going to do a couple of quick upgrades. So what I want to do is I want to put a little apron here on the machine vise so that the swarf doesn't necessarily pool down in there, and I want to put a little apron here on the front of the machine again so the swarf doesn't drop into the threads of the table adjust. If you look, if I wind it back, you can see that there's an apron here at the back, so one at the front will complement that. For the aprons, I started by forming sheet metal into two U-shaped channels approximately 20 millimeters deep and 5 millimeters wide. To do this, I marked out a 45mm wide strip on a sheet metal offcut. Then it was off to the guillotine to cut this out. I then cut it into two lengths, one at 370mm and the other at 135mm. These were to suit the table apron and the machine vise apron. Back at the bench, I marked the longitudinal centre on each of the strips. Before going back to the press brake to bend the strips into 90-degree angles. Back at the bench again, I used a length of 20 by 3mm bar as a former, along with a planishing hammer to produce the final U shape. I used cheap rubber mats as the source of the apron material. From one mat I cut the two aprons that I needed. After inserting the rubber mat into the channel, I used a hammer and a 6mm diameter centre punch to produce a series of indentations to hold the rubber mat in place. The front table apron for the bench mill needed a hanging bracket, and to provide this I drilled 2 bolt holes in a rectangle of sheet metal. The hanger for the front table apron for the bench mill was attached using blind rivets. To ensure that the apron sits flush against the table, I hammered the rivet ends to flatten them against the apron bracket. With the aprons made, it was on to fitting them. A pair of M10 bolts were used to attach the apron to the front of the machine vise. The front table apron was attached by bolting the hanger in behind the existing table stop. With the aprons done, I'm ready to move on to the service of the bench mill. The drain plug for the bench mill gearbox is up under here. With the oil drained, the head unit was lowered to access the top of the gearbox and refill the oil. With the gearbox sorted, it was onto the various oil points around the machine. Bit dark to see behind the table, but there was another oil point in the middle of the table. Then it was off with the concertina curtain shielding the Z-axis screw shaft. I used moly grease to coat the screw shaft and the pinion gear at the bottom before refitting the concertina curtain. I gave the Y direction ways under the rear apron a good clean with kerosene. Then lubricated the screw with moly grease. And finally oiled the ways. I then refitted the rear apron. Then I greased the X direction screw shaft, again with moly grease. Finally, I moved on to lubricating the machine vise. Finished all the jobs on the bench mill. Before we move on, I just wanted to show you this. It's just a little brush and tray for brushing swarf on the bench mill. I've got another one that I use on the lathe, but the modification on this one is a little T-piece that I've cut out of sheet metal, and I use that to scrape the channels in the table. That works very nicely. Just thought I'd share that. Moving on to the lathe, I've done a whole program on the service requirements for centre lathes in general and the AL336. You can find that back in my videos, and with some luck I will have a card up here somewhere that will take you directly to a video that will show you everything you need to know about servicing this unit. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to work through the servicing. I'm not quite sure how much will end up in the final video, but as I say, there is an in-depth video on servicing this lathe in my video library. As I highlighted in my centre lathe servicing video, Here I'm using the vacuum technique to hold the oil in the headstock gearbox while I fit the drain hose. I've cut out most of the video of the oil draining from the headstock. As you can appreciate with the thin tube that I use as the drain hose, it takes quite a while. With the oil drained, I use the vacuum technique again to refit the drain plug. Then it was on to refilling the headstock gearbox. Next was a quick change gearbox. Obstructions beside the filler hole prevent the vacuum technique being used here. So I set up a specially constructed drain to direct the oil into the catch pan, undo the bottom plug and hope for the best. I then used a pump bottle to add the replacement oil. Then it was on to the saddle's gearbox, first draining its contents. And then refilling again using a pump bottle. With the gearboxes taken care of, it was on to lubricating the oil points. Followed by the screw shaft. I gave the saddle rack a quick wipe down before applying moly grease to the track. This was then followed by lubrication of the cross slide. The workshop is located in a coastal region, and humidity and consequent rust is a constant enemy. So I finish it by giving the bare metal areas of the lathe a good coating of Inox MX3. The rest of the machines here get a similar coating of Inox MX3 on their bare metal surfaces as well. And of course the faithful old drill press gets a bit of love as well. Whilst I had the grease gun handy, I re-greased the 3-in-1 sheet metal machine. So the compressor is one of the valuable units in the workshop. Unfortunately, it's a very noisy little chap, and it's hell in the workshop when it's rattling away. So it gets a cubby all of its own outside, all semi-soundproofed. Once again, the pump bottle comes in handy for small volume refills like the compressor. The bottles hold a litre of oil each, and I have a number of them which I use for just this type of job. Okay, so I've changed the oil The only thing to do now is to check the air filters. Compressor just pumps air, that's what it does, and its air filters are probably as important as the oil. It's all pretty clean around here, so it doesn't pick up much in the way of rubbish. And generally I just wipe off the rubbish on the front, have a little bit of a look, see what it looks like, see whether it's particularly dirty. Every now and then, every year, every few years, I actually replace the filters. But these will keep going for a little while yet. This is a 3-cylinder unit, so there's 3 air filters, but it's all the same from the first one to the last one, so I won't bore you with all 3. So that brings us to the end of maintaining the machines in the workshop. We've done the bench mill, we've done the lathe, given a little bit of love to the 3-in-1 metal worker, a bit of love to the drill press, and we've done the service on the compressor. There's not much more for me to do now except clean up, that's always fun. And what I also do is I go around and I put a little sticker on each one which tells what the oil was and when the service was done. Probably when you work on your own like I do, that sort of stuff doesn't really matter, but hey, in this day of COVID, who knows, I could be dead next week and somebody will need to know what that machine uses. Anyhow, I hope you enjoyed the episode, and if you did, I'd love a thumbs up. And please, share it widely. Got any comments, chuck them down below, always respond. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, you've just found this one, well, think about subscribing. I like to fix stuff, maintain stuff, renovate stuff. There's always something interesting on the White Dog Garage YouTube channel. And it's easy, you just hit the subscribe bar down below. While you're there, ding the bell so that you'll get a notification from YouTube the next time an episode on the White Dog Garage YouTube channel loads. Thank you once again, and I'll be talking to you next time. Bye!